The Assembly Committee on Government Affairs will come to order. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Assemblywoman Anderson. Assemblywoman Black. Assemblywoman Brown May. Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblywoman Dickman. Assemblywoman Duran. Assemblyman Ellison. Assemblywoman Martinez. Assemblyman Matthews. Assemblyman MacArthur. Assemblywoman Thomas. Assemblywoman Torres. Chair Flores.
Present. Please let the record reflect all members are present. We have a quorum. Good morning, members. I want to remind you, just for the purposes of making IT's life a lot easier, please make sure that you are not in the committee room and also logged into Zoom. You're either in the committee room or you're logged in via Zoom. Thank you for those of you joining us in person today. Always an honor to have folk here present. For those of you who are following along and would like some type of guidance in terms of how we intend to proceed, we do have 3 items, better said 4 items on the agenda, 3 bill hearings followed by public comment. We're going to do first Senate Bill 311, followed by Senate Bill 360, and then lastly Senate Bill 72. And then at the very end, we'll do public comment. I want to remind everybody to please remain respectful. And for those of you who intend to present today, please state your name for the record after each question. That is not to help us, but rather to help our staff who are taking minutes, and you'll make their life a lot easier. So I thank you in advance for doing that. And with that, at this time, I'd like to open up the hearing on Senate Bill 311. I do see Senator Ratty here. Good morning, Senator. Welcome to your Committee on Government Affairs whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Assembly Committee on Government Affairs, Chair Flores and the entire team. My name is Senator Julia Ratty, and I represent Senate District 13, which is in northern Nevada and is sort of the middle of Washoe County, if you will. I kind of have the downtowns of Reno and Sparks and that general urban core of that area. I'm almost giddy to be here because this is my first in-person hearing presenting a bill in the Assembly, and it is so very good to see you all. It feels like it's a small step back towards some level of normalcy, so excited to be here. I know by day 81 in the session that you have already heard a significant amount about affordable housing, and so I left behind my 200-page PowerPoint deck that has all the data about affordable housing because I believe at this point in the session that you know that the state of Nevada suffers from a tremendous shortage of affordable housing. So I'm going to spare you all that. I hope you don't hold it against me that I am not doing that. But just to as a reminder, the situation is particularly dire for our extremely low-income Nevadans, where there's as few as, we have 21,000 units that we're short in the state of Nevada when you're talking about somebody who's living at 50% AMI. And then of course what happens is every tier that you go up in income, there's still a shortage and still a shortage. And our main tool for addressing that is building subsidized units using different forms of tax credits and different forms of programs where those individuals who are living at a lower income can get a unit that has a subsidy. But they are very hard to come by, and there's not anywhere near enough of them. In 2019, I was privileged to be able to, or in 2017, I was privileged to be able to get one of the interim studies and to do a deep dive on affordable housing. And one of the best partners that emerged in that work was the Nevada Rural Housing Authority. Bill Brewer and his team have stepped up and worked diligently to support me and many other legislators across the state in trying to get creative about tools that we can bring forward on affordable housing. In this case, this one's a little counterintuitive because what this does is just for the Rural Housing Authority, allow them to get into the space of building market rate housing. And that may seem like a strange concept, right? Why would we want one of our key partners who does affordable housing to be able to build market rate? But the truth of the matter is that the tools that we have available to us that work in larger communities that have denser populations don't always work in some of our smaller communities that have less dense population. And they need to get even more creative. And the solution that is presented in this bill is the ability to build some market rate units where the profits from those units could help to support some of the lower income units. And to make sure that there's a developer in those communities that is taking care of that 80% AMI and that 100% AMI, and not just building luxury housing. Because the mission of the Nevada Rural Housing Authority is to make sure that there's housing for everybody. So this is a trusted partner, giving them a tool that allows them to build those for-profit units so that they can have that tool in their tool belt. I think the other unique situation that you'll hear from is often in these rural communities, we'll have one employer come in and they'll go big. And let's just take the example of a mine. If that employer isn't able to build some housing, what happens is when there's this influx of new people that come in, they push the existing residents who are in affordable units out of those units, or the cost of those units goes up significantly because supply and demand has changed significantly in that community. And so if we can work with those entities to build housing at the time they come in so that they're not pushing others out of housing, that is also a strategy. So this allows this particularly good partner to have the opportunity to get really creative. And with that, I'm going to stop and ask that I turn it over to the true subject matter experts who are with you today to explain the bill.
Hi, good morning. Welcome whenever you're ready. We can see your slideshow, but I don't know if you're speaking. If you are, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear us now?
Now we can. Please state your name for the record. Good morning.
Excellent.
And welcome.
Good morning. This is Katie Coleman for the record, and Bill Brewer is actually going to speak first.
There we go. Hopefully you can hear me now. Appreciate this opportunity. Bill Brewer for the record. Want to thank you, Chair Flores and Vice Chair Torres and the Assembly Government Affairs Committee for giving us this opportunity to hold the hearing today. Especially appreciate Senator Ratty for her sponsoring SB 311 and for her tremendous work for affordable housing in the state of Nevada. We really do appreciate all her efforts. Nevada Rural Housing Authority's mission is to promote, provide, and finance affordable housing opportunities for all rural Nevadans. As Senator Ratty mentioned, SB 311 simply gives us another tool that will help us to fulfill our mission. SB 311 would allow NRHA to develop, own, and participate in and manage housing at market rents. That's really the crux of the bill. It does not alter our mission. It enhances our ability to meet the ancillary needs of rural Nevadans across the state. We aim to address the housing ecosystem through innovating and operating programs that serve low to moderate income households, special populations such as veterans and senior citizens and the disabled, and delivering affordable homeownership opportunities. We want to be able to build unsubsidized housing so we can continue to subsidize our mission. The specifics of this proposal are in Section 1. This legislation will only affect the operations of NRHA. It doesn't affect the other housing authorities in Nevada. It brings the definition of affordable housing into alignment with the definitions that were promulgated in the last legislative session to mean that housing is affordable to Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 households. In Sections 3 and 4, the term business entity is revised to include a for-profit corporation. NRHA would be enabled to construct or operate a housing project for profit. And we realize that in the nonprofit and government world, profit is not a good word, but it's describes what we're trying to do, not so we can earn a profit, but so that the revenues from those units would be able to subsidize other units. It would allow us to form a business entity for the purpose of operating and managing housing projects, and would allow the authority or business entity, as applicable, to negotiate pilot agreements with local governments for payments in lieu of taxes. The 2019 session helped us define affordable housing. SB 311 puts these affordable housing tiers into action and allows our agency to align our work to best serve those tiers. Tier 1 affordability is defined as household incomes of not more than 60% of the area median income for the county in which the housing is located. Tier 2 are household incomes with that are more than 60%, but not more than 80% of the area median income. And Tier 3 is defined as household incomes equal to or more than 80% of AMI, but not more than 120% of AMI. So those are the specific households that we're looking to serve. Katie? You're muted, Katie.
There we go. My apologies. Here I am. Okay, Katie Coleman for the record. Okay, a little bit about our history. NRHA is approaching its 50th year in operation in serving rural Nevadans. NRHA was actually Nevada's first public housing agency, or PHA, created in 1973, and a lot has evolved for our agency since then. We are considered a local government agency. We have a board of commissioners composed of individuals who are appointed by either the Nevada League of Cities or the Nevada Association of Counties. And our agency's evolution has really centered around the expansion of our program offerings. Each program inception is outlined here in this timeline here, but I'm going to dig into just a couple of the highlights. Today, our variety of mission-driven programs really focus on the spectrum of housing, from homeless to home buyer. For example, the Home at Last program has delivered affordable home ownership opportunities to 9,000 and a few more since we made this presentation, rural Nevada families since 2006. And we do this through a couple mechanisms: down payment assistance options, mortgage credit certificates, home buyer education, and training to really ensure that responsible home ownership is part of what we offer. Rental services. We deliver the Housing Choice Voucher Program that impacts 2,000 plus rural Nevada renters. We are honored to be an agency that was selected by the state of Nevada to help administer the COVID-related Emergency Rental Assistance Fund, branded as CHAP, in rural Nevada. We've done that since July, and we have helped assist more than 600 renter households, far more than 1,000 at this point, instances of continuing assistance thus far. And our real estate operations, we manage 612 multifamily units on 13 property sites, plus 7 single-family rentals throughout rural Nevada. Nearly all of those tenants are below that 50% AMI. And in addition, we are a grantee of the Weatherization and Home Repair Program, which ensures safe, healthy, energy-efficient homes for low-income households in Carson, Churchill, Douglas, Lyon, Story, North Las Vegas, and northern rural Clark. And then our community development arm of the organization is really responsible for those ground-up developments throughout rural Nevada. We also work with rural communities to help find those opportunities for rehabilitation, preservation of those existing units. And this process is tip to tail for us, involving project design and planning, funding, of course, as part of that, and construction project management. Our development decisions certainly don't happen in a bubble, and we so value the relationships that we have with our rural cities and counties who really want that understanding of their housing needs and then work together to find those best solutions. So our studies and data really help with those conversations. And to date, NRHA has made $65 million plus in local investments.
So why do we need this legislation to continue all this important work?
Sir, my apologies. If you could just please state your name for the record.
I'm sorry, Bill Brewer, Nevada Rural Housing Authority. Anyone in housing knows that it's not inexpensive to develop, and federal assistance gives developers in Nevada just enough to build a few hundred units per year. And that's really part of our major problem. The resources that are available to the state are completely utilized, which is great. There just aren't enough of those to build what we need. For every project, we have to be creative in how these projects pencil so that we can ensure we always build quality housing for the people we serve. SB 311 would allow NRHA to use proceeds from market rate units to reinvest in housing opportunities for the spectrum of incomes. Just as an example, the property might have 80% of its units at market rate and 20% of its units at a rent that is affordable and reserved for qualifying low-income households. SB 311 will also allow NRHA to work with local industry to help bring needed housing to rural communities. As an example, NRHA could work with new mines to develop housing for incoming employee households who might otherwise drive lower income households out of the market. And this bill will also clarify that NRHA is allowed to work through for-profit entities, commonly an LLC, to conduct its development and management business. This just gets us more into the mainstream of housing. In closing, we can't depend on the usual funding mechanism to do our job and fulfill our mission. We have to think differently, and if COVID has taught us one thing, it's taught us to think outside the box. SB 311 will allow us to do just that. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Chair Flores, Julia Ratty for the record. That concludes our presentation, and we stand ready for questions. I would offer to walk through the bill if you'd like, but it's a relatively straightforward bill, and I think that Mr. Brewer hit the highlights of it.
I think we're good for now. Thank you. We'll start off with questions, and we'll start off with Assemblywoman Brown-May, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Ratty. What a great presentation and an awesome way to start a Friday. So first I have to say that. My question is really relative to the market rate units and the development of that, let's just say, housing community. First, I think the solution is creative and insightful, and that market rate units can help to not only fund that outcome that you're trying to achieve, but include an at-risk population. And so really my question is about when we look at developing a new community of market rate units, would we see that there's a percentage of units that would be set aside within that community in and of itself to meet the needs of people who would not be at that area median income, right? So would you have a percentage of units to meet the needs of the lack of housing? And where I'm heading with this is really about accessible, integrated units to meet the needs of people with disabilities or people who are not able to move out of a certain area.
Thank you, Julia Ratty for the record. Thank you, Assemblywoman Brown-May, through you, Chair Flores, to the Assemblywoman.
Please go straight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. So it's a fantastic question, and I appreciate the spirit behind it, because the ideal solution for affordable housing is integration, right? But like the world that we all want to see is not like, here's a stack of housing that is for those people, and here's a stack of housing that is for those people, and here's a stack of housing that's for those people. And as our society is aging, as you point out, not wanting to have, as perhaps a person stops working and either their income level or their ability declines, that now they have to move from this stack of housing to this stack of housing that disconnects them from the community that they've developed. That's the ideal. In our current system, where we use low-income housing tax credits to build affordable units, so these are the subsidized units that I'm going to rent, the rent's going to be based on what my income level is. We have been successful building one project across the state of Nevada where affordable units were integrated into a market rate housing project. One. It's in northern Nevada by the Summit Mall, if you're ever out and about. And It's because the nuance, so those projects are built with a stack of funding streams that come with a stack of restrictions, and the nuances of building a pro forma for a housing development and stacking all those funding streams, plus putting market rate in to make it actually pencil for a developer to be able to bring that out of the ground is very tricky, and only one has been able to tackle it. So the nature of this program is that getting that a little bit more flexible funding stream available to be able to be more creative to do that. So if the Nevada Rural Housing Authority is able to generate revenue off of market rate housing, that market rate housing revenue would be more traditional to any business, where the income that comes in is generally you can use more strategically, right? Because it doesn't come with all these either federal strings or donor strings if you're in the philanthropic world. And that income can be used more strategically. That's going to give them greater flexibility to be able to analyze market need and then meet market need. But I want to be cautious here that the reality is that the housing market in Ely, Nevada, and the existing housing infrastructure looks very different than the housing market in Story County than does the housing market in Pahrump. And so what the Nevada Rural Housing Authority is very good at is having local on-the-ground partnerships and understanding that community. And so the truth of the matter is it is going to look very different in every community based on what's already on the ground, what the need is, what the resources are, what land can be purchased, what labor is available. So there's nothing in this bill that drives towards that integration, but it does give them more flexible strategic funding to be able to achieve it when the opportunity presents and the need is there. That was a long answer, but that's the honest answer.
Thank you for that answer, Chair. One follow-up.
Please follow up.
Senator Ratty, when this development is built, let's just say in any county, pick any county, who will actually own the property and the development?
Julia Ratty, for the record, I'd like to turn that over to Bill Brewer.
Thank you, Senator Ratty and Assemblywoman Brown May. Appreciate that question. Bill Brewer, for the record. These housing developments are typically developed through a structure of LLCs, depending on the type of development. Again, Senator Ratty totally explained it very well, how these things are developed with a stack of different funding resources. And so typically an LLC is organized with the developer, which in this particular case would be NRHA. And then we would sell the tax credits, or an investor would take on the tax credits with an infusion of money or equity that would come into the project. And so we form an LLC or a partnership to bring in that investor money and help build the project. And of course, those investors are for-profit entities that serve other for-profit entities that need tax breaks, like big banks and big corporations. And so that's how equity flows into these projects, through tax credits. In this case, and it's hard to say exactly how these might develop over time, but we would anticipate entering into an LLC arrangement with some other group, and that LLC would then own the project. We would tend to be, the NRHA would typically be the managing member of that LLC. Hope that helps.
Very, very much. Thank you. I appreciate the detail in that question, and I appreciate the spirit of where you're heading with this as well. Hopefully, it will present us with many solutions in the future.
Thank you, Assemblywoman, for your question. Members, just so that we all have clarity in the queue of questions, I have Assemblywoman Considine, followed by Assemblyman Ellison, and then followed by Assemblywoman Black. If anybody else has a question, please let me know so we can get you in the queue. Please, Assemblywoman Considine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Ratty and Mr. Brewer and Ms. Coleman. It's great to see an affordable housing bill, and wonderful to see that we're trying to solve a problem in as many different ways as it needs to be solved. My question's kind of straightforward. With this, the for-profit entity partnership arrangement, just want to make sure that the Nevada Rural Housing Authority will retain any rights and responsibilities to, if there's any actions, any construction, problems, if there are any problems, that the entity would have all of the rights and responsibilities and ability to deal with their other contracted members as they would if they were not involved with any other rural authority.
Once again, Julia Ratty for the record. Mr. Brewer, I'm going to kick that one over to you.
Thank you, Senator Bill Brewer, for the record. Great question. And yes, we would retain that responsibility for those projects that are developed on this kind of a basis, and would anticipate always being the managing member of that group in order to make sure the project meets the needs that we're looking for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next, we'll go to Assemblyman Ellison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Senator. I've got a different outlook on housing based on my area. I work on a lot of the units, like in Ely and Eureka, that are great, and they're so needed out in the rural areas. But the problem I've got right now, and I'll be right out front, because of housing and what's happened, we have so many people that lost their life savings because of the pandemic. But what happened was, as these people said no more rent, you couldn't pay rent, and the government didn't step up, they've lost everything they own. They've lost their life savings, they've lost their homes, they've lost their cars, they've lost everything. So as this money come available that they could get in to help offset, that never happened. They did $1 million, 90% of it went to Vegas, which they needed, but the rules got stuck. Now, these rental units are all up for sale. A lot of them are up for sale. And why? It's because they couldn't afford the payments. So I got a real problem. And I don't know how we can fix this, but the damage is done. And now they extended it even longer. So you're going to have 2 years with no payments. So this is a real problem. And these people had low rents in 90% of these, like in Wells, Nevada. I mean, real low rent, $500, $600 a month with utilities. Now, they've lost everything they own, and housing could have stepped up to the place in Nevada, and they did not. When they kept applying for the loans and to help, I don't know of anybody that got a dime from these guys. And that's a problem. And do we need housing? Yes, we do. But now you just created a housing market that's closing, and that's going to make it 10 times worse. And you can't build them fast enough to fix the problem. I hope you can see where my frustration's coming from, because it's bad. And Nevada Housing could have stepped up to the plate and at least tried to help save some of the older people, and that didn't happen. And I don't care what they say. I've watched these people lose everything they own. Everything.
Chair Flores, I'd be happy to respond to that. I don't know that it is directly to the intent of this bill, but I'm happy to respond to it. So Julia Ratty, Senate District 13, for the record. So Mr. Ellison, first of all, I just want to acknowledge your frustration. I'm sorry, I didn't mean Assemblyman Ellison. I want to acknowledge your frustration. Certainly, the state of Nevada has experienced endless challenges through the pandemic, and I am not here to dismiss that and say that that's not real. Housing, in particular, has been an incredible challenge during the pandemic, when the public health response has resulted in a devastating impact to our economy, and that balancing of our citizens' health, physical health, with their economic health has been what I would call a Sophie's choice, right? There is no perfect answer to that, and I think we have all struggled with that. So I just want to acknowledge that. I have been lucky enough to be the legislator who is appointed to the State Advisory Committee on Housing. And so from that lens, I have been able to see where the money has been coming in from the federal government and where the money has been distributed from the federal government in order to do the rental assistance. And I will say that, like many programs, we are endlessly grateful for the extra resources that we got prior to this last election and following this last election. across bipartisan administrations to make sure that rental assistance got into the hands of individuals so that they could maintain their homes and so that they could pay their rent so that those landlords would get some relief as well. And was it perfect? It absolutely was not. But from the seat that I was sitting in, I got to see it come in. I got to see how it was distributed. And what I will say is that Nevada Rural Housing Authority was the most efficient, the most leaning in about taking the resources that they had available with the rules that were put on those resources by the federal government and getting those resources into the hands of rural Nevadans who needed them. Were there enough resources that every situation could be addressed? Absolutely not. Were the resources flexible enough so that every situation could be addressed? Absolutely not. But I am 100% confident that Nevada Rural Housing Authority leaned in with the resources that they had available, with the strings that they had attached, and did the very best they could by the most people that they could. And real Nevadans in real rural communities got rental assistance that kept them in their homes and got to landlords that stabilized their situation. That's just a fact. Did it get to every person in every community that was needed? Absolutely not. And with a pandemic, with an economic scale at the level that we have experienced in this nation, there's no question that there will be downstream market implications. And I don't want to talk about human beings like markets, but that is true. You and I are old enough to have lived through the 2008 recession and the disruption in housing that happened during that time. And yes, there's probably something coming in our direction that is a similar scale during this recession. But I don't think any single human, elected official, or any agency was going to be able to hold back that tidal wave based on this pandemic. So I hear your frustration. I think that it is not unreasonable. I think it is misplaced by focusing it on Nevada Rural Housing Authority, because I watched them lean in. I saw that they helped people, and they wanted to help more people, but I saw that they did everything that they could with the dollars that they had. So that's my experience of it.
And I thank you, and you've done a great job, and I appreciate this, and I like your bill. My frustration is they could have done a better job. They should have made the rents to the older people. That way they could have made the bank payments without losing everything they had. So I think it was a ways they could have got around it and helped everybody, but that didn't help. And I know they were restricted by law. And how they did it, but in the meantime, the damage is done to some of these older people, and they're in the 80s and 90s and have no income, no home, and no nothing now. So thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Black.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the presentation. So according to the presentation, we're 21,000 units short. And I'm just curious, as a for-profit, basically government business, what is the NRHA going to do differently than our private developers are able to do that's going to address the shortage?
So thank you, Assemblywoman Black. I believe I'm still going direct. Julia Reddy for the record. So it's a great question, right? Like, is the market solution able to get us there, and how would this impact the market solution? So first of all, I want to point out that the 21,000 is statewide, and the vast majority of those are in Clark County and Washoe County. We are not proposing this solution in Clark County or Washoe County. There is a housing authority in Clark County, there is a housing authority in Washoe County. And in those markets, we do not believe that it is appropriate for those markets, because there's a wealth of developers who are looking at housing and are doing market-based decisions. We probably need to get more carrots, if you will, more incentives into place so that those for-profit developers will have more reasons to target their housing lower in the income stream in the market. So we need to work with our for-profit developers to get more folks going in that direction. But we're not proposing the solution in those communities. We are proposing the solution in the rural communities, because there is a dearth of developers who are doing that work, private developers who are doing that work in these communities. And so the assessment is that this is not going to have any competitive impact in communities where there's not a lot of competition to build housing in the first place. So, and that it will be very targeted towards making sure that the lowest income households are the ones that they're building housing for based on the mission, as opposed to others who may come in where there's a retirement community where we're setting up a golf course. The Nevada Rural Housing Authority is not interested in that housing, which is what tends to pencil best in the market rate world. They're interested more in those units that are going to be affordable for folks who need them. So that's the answer.
Please follow up.
Okay, so let's take a specific example that I'm privy to, or I've been privy to, which is Mesquite. What is NRHA going to do different in Mesquite that's going to make it pencil that a private developer cannot do or will not do? Like, what's going to be different?
So, Mr. Brewer, do you want to take a crack at that one?
Be glad to, Senator. Thank you, Bill Brewer, for the record. And thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Black. We really, to be perfectly honest, are not going to do anything that much different than a for-profit developer. The main difference for us, as Senator Ratty so well explained, is that we'll go into the rurals and do that, whereas most for-profit developers are not doing that. For-profit developers are busy as they can be in the metropolitan areas, and I applaud them for that, and they're meeting need there, and that's a good thing. There are for-profit developers in the tax credit space who are applying for tax credits each year and building affordable housing. We have no desire to compete with those folks, nor to take over what they're doing. Our desire is simply to engage in this type of housing so that as a government or nonprofit entity, we can use those revenues from a project such as a market rate housing development and use those revenues to support some lower income households. That's the only difference, really.
And Chair Flores, if I may just follow up.
Sure, please.
One of the challenges of Nevada is, of course, 15 counties spread across an enormous geography, right, with lots of different aspects to each community. So if the market rate developers are meeting the housing needs in that community, rural housing doesn't need to go there. They're going to be looking at the communities where the needs are not being met.
Follow up, please.
Well, I can tell you from experience, there have been private developers that want to develop in Mesquite, and they haven't been able to make it pencil. So if the Rural Nevada Housing Authority doesn't have some other unfair advantage to compete to make it more financially feasible, then they have the same resources as a private developer, and the private developer couldn't get it done. I don't think so. So unless you have something they can do different.
Thank you for the clarification. Again, Julia Ratty for the record. That really does help me dial in. You're absolutely right. If a private developer isn't going to be able to make it pencil, Nevada Rural Housing Authority isn't going to be able to make it pencil either. So there is no solution there. Where the combination of market rate units and tax credits will work is when it will pencil to build housing generally, and all the tax credits do is if let's just say those units pencil at $1,000 per month, just to use a nice round number, and for the cost of land and the cost of labor and the cost of construction, a developer, private or a rural housing authority, can make that pencil, and they can make it pencil at $1,000 per unit. What this would allow for is then that for a portion of those units, they could overlay the tax credits that they get, and by doing so, they could take that $1,000 unit and they can bring it down to $750 for people who qualify at that income level, because they've got this tax credit that's coming in that's allowing them to do that. They're not able to make any more profit off that unit. They're not able to do anything else, but they are able to buy down the rate of some of those units for the people who need them to be affordable. Then, just like a for-profit developer, if there's some profit off of these units over here that are still paying $1,000 a month, they're able to turn that profit over into their next unit. And so where the difference is that the Rural Housing Authority is going to take that profit and reinvest it in its next unit, where the private developer may take some of that profit and reinvest it in its new project, and some of it's going to go to the owners of the business, if you will. That's the difference. So there's no competitive advantage to be able to build the unit, but what tools they're able to use to buy down the rate and where the profits will go is what the distinction is. I hope that helps to explain.
Please follow up.
So basically, they would have an unfair advantage over private developers.
So, Julia Ratty, for the record, I would disagree with that characterization because they have a resource that buys down the rent for people who would never be able to afford those units anyway. So that private developer is never going to get that unit from that individual. And we're accomplishing the social good of making sure that that person who can only afford $750 a month can have a unit that is $750 a month. But there's no profit there because they can't use any of that extra money for themselves. They can only use it for that social good for that individual. And then there's a mission-based decision that they're going to use their profit in a different way. But that doesn't give them a competitive advantage. That's just a choice with how you use your profits.
Can I ask a question, just a specific question? We talked earlier, Mr. Brewer, about a piece of property in Mesquite. Did you guys is the rural Nevada, or the housing authority getting a better deal on that property that you told me about earlier today than a private developer would get on that?
Bill Brewer, for the record, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that question, and the short answer is yes, the property was donated by a family land trust or a family trust to us for the development of housing that would support lower income households. And so in that way, we would get a better deal than a for-profit developer who might have to purchase that land. And we then are able to use that cost savings to lower the rents ultimately on those units.
So that's
It
that's
doesn't
been my
provide us a
experience as well, is that
competitive
the city of Mesquite specifically, I've been dealing with this issue in that community for 2 years before I came here. The city of Mesquite is incentivizing the housing authority with free property, but if maybe we did that with private developers, we wouldn't be having to talk about this bill right now.
Thank you. I understand the concern now. So again, Senator Ratty, for the record, absolutely. We have tax credit programs, we have redevelopment programs, we have private donors who give land. We do all kinds of different things so that there are developers in the community who will build the units that market rate developers will not build so that people can have a place to live. 100%, I agree with that statement.
Members, do we have any additional questions? Madam Vice Chair, please.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Senator Ratty. I know it's a little awkward where I'm angled. We'll just play dodge a little bit. But I just wanted some clarification just based off the conversation and the dialogue. There's never been anything impeding for-profit businesses to work with Nevada Rural Housing Authority before, correct? They could have worked to create affordable housing without the for-profit entities could have done that already, correct?
Absolutely. Senator Julia Ratty, for the record, yes. I don't believe there are any barriers to a for-profit developer choosing to build lower cost units.
Thank you. And just one follow-up, if I may, Senator. And there's nothing that would prevent them from doing that in the future, right?
Correct. And again, Julia Ratty, for the record, for clarity, there's nothing in the law that prevents them to do that. But so I spent 8 years on a city council for the city of Sparks. I know many of you know that. Not everybody here would probably know that. And so I just want to acknowledge that there are real market barriers to doing that sometimes. And particularly right now, cost of land, cost of labor, cost of lumber are the items that are making it difficult for for-profit housing developers to build lower price units. Then there's also a profit incentive, so they're going to look at the market broadly and they're going to figure out which product can they build that's going to make them the most money. And with an influx of folks coming from California who have an ability to pay a significant amount more for housing, what we're seeing is that the for-profit development community is building luxury rate housing more than they are building medium income housing and almost never low income housing, because that is what the free market dynamic is creating, and that is reasonable. It's not judging anybody, it's not casting aspersions. That is just the reality. Is they're for-profit businesses, their job is to make money, and so the market dynamics make it difficult for them to do lower income units, and we as a society still have people who need those units. So there's no legal barrier to doing it. There are some market conditions that make it difficult for them to accomplish.
Thank you. And even though all of that exists, I think that we can kind of agree that we don't have enough affordable housing. So I really appreciate the intent of this legislation. I look forward to supporting this legislation as a means for us to create more affordable housing, because we know that we just don't have enough.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Assemblyman Ellison, please.
Thank you, and I have friends that build, affordable housing. Well, they were doing quite a few of them till a while back, and things come apart. But they were building them, and they were doing quite well, and the people were really happy. So, but the problem right now we have is going into this new world we have right now. One sheet of plywood a week ago or 2 weeks ago was $50-some. It's $95 today. I bid a project in Winnemucca for 20-some thousand. It's 68 right now because it wasn't labor. It's all in the cost of materials. So there's going to be a lot of these projects that are going to be put on hold right now because of the cost of materials just went skyrocket. And this happened in the last 30 days. So I know you're going to have to deal with that kind of problems out there and coming up, but it's the cost has really went skyrocket. And I would like to meet with you offline and talk to you about some of the issues that we might have and what we could do to fix them if we could.
Thank you, Julia Reddy, again for the record. Always happy to meet with you, Assemblyman Ellison, and figure out what all of the possible tools are available. I will just say that this one little affordable housing bill will not solve all of those problems, but I do think that is a tool in a toolkit that if we philosophically believe everybody, regardless of their income level, deserves a safe, clean, affordable place to live, that this will help some people in some places get that.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any additional questions? Thank you for the thoughtful dialogue. At this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 311. Do we have anybody present here who would like to do that? I don't believe you are here for that bill. Just wanted to confirm. Broadcast, if we could please go to the phones for those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 311.
To testify in support of Senate Bill 311, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 728. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, this is Marla McDade Williams speaking today on behalf of Churchill County. We'd just like to go on record in support of this measure. Churchill County has a lot of issues with housing at the moment, and is looking any opportunity that could help them potentially meet that need would be appreciated. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us this morning. Next caller wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 311.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 311.
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 311, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in the neutral position to Senate Bill 311.
To testify in the neutral position on Senate Bill 311, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 080. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last three digits of 080, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, Chairman Flores and members of the committee. My name is Eric Novak, spelled Ericnovak. I was having technical difficulties and we were actually wanting to speak in support of SB 311, and I'm hoping that's possible.
Yes, please
now.
continue. Yes, please do.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm treasurer of the Nevada Housing Coalition. The Nevada Housing Coalition, which is registered strong support for Senate Bill 311. The Nevada Housing Coalition is a statewide membership-based nonprofit that works to advance affordable housing options and address housing insecurity for all Nevadans. Our members come from the public and private sectors, representing urban and rural perspectives from across the state. SB 311 will provide our friends at Nevada Rural Housing Authority, or NRHA, with additional flexibility in addressing the pressing housing needs in rural Nevada, and will bring its statutory authority in line with that already enjoyed by the 2 urban housing authorities in the state. NRHA is already the go-to agency in rural Nevada for housing planning, affordable housing development and preservation, rental assistance, weatherization, and mortgage assistance. This is difficult work in sparsely populated communities with boom and bust economic cycles, where it's often difficult to attract conventional lenders and investors. SB 311 will allow NRHA to further its mission as well as diversify its financial base in a time of more limited government resources. We want to again thank Senator Ratty for bringing forward these changes to the law, which we believe provide NRHA with new tools for accomplishing its critical mission, and urge the committee to support SB 311. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. I know there may have been other callers who were intending to call. I do see a list of other individuals that were signed in to speak in support. If I accidentally skipped you and/or if you didn't have a chance to log in, please feel free to still call in. I don't want to discourage you from doing that. We are in the neutral position, but again, if you are in support or opposition, I still want to give you the opportunity to speak. I know we went kind of quickly via the phone, so please call in. We'll stay with those wishing to testify in the neutral position on Senate Bill 311.
To testify in the neutral position on Senate Bill 311, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the neutral position at this time.
Thank you. At the request of Mr. Barry Gold from AARP, just wanted to put on the record that there is a letter that's been uploaded to NALIS, wherein on behalf of the 345,000 members across the state of AARP, state their support for Senate Bill 311 and urge the committee to pass it to help ensure affordable housing is available in rural Nevada. That letter is a little bit longer than that, but I just wanted to summarize the position of AARP. With that, Senator, we'll come back to you and any closing remarks you may have.
Julia Ratty, for the record, again, representing Senate District 13. I just want to express my gratitude to the committee for scheduling this bill so quickly after the deadline, after it got over to you. I appreciate very much the opportunity to have the dialogue. I understand that solving our state's housing issues are complex, but I feel very strongly that this is a good tool that is going to a good partner that will make a difference for some people in our rural communities.
And thank you, Senator. We appreciate that, and I'm sure you'll be working alongside of the members as they raise other issues and/or conversations to ensure everything pencils in, as Assemblywoman Black and Assemblyman Ellison indicated. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 311. Thank you, Senator. Again, thank you for all your co-presenters. And we appreciate you, Senator. I'll take point of privilege, as I know you've been working on this issue of affordable housing for a very long time. So thank you for always championing that very difficult conversation. With that, next on the agenda, we have Senate Bill 360. And I believe we're going to have Senator Pondero Loop joining us. Good morning, Senator. And with that, we'll open up the hearing on Senate Bill 360. Senator Dendero Loop, whenever you're ready.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be back in this room. I haven't been in this room for a while. Thank you, Chair Flores, and for the record, I am Marilyn Dondero Loop, representing Senate District 8 in Clark County, and I'm pleased to present Senate Bill 360 to the committee, which revises the appointment of members to the Board of the Public Employees Benefits Program to help ensure the board best represents the interests of our public employees. I'm joined for this presentation by Randy Soltero and Laura Rich, and I will be introducing the bill, and then I will turn the presentation over to my co-presenters to provide additional background and details. Please be aware that the following discussions with various stakeholders, an amendment to the bill is now proposed. And just a few minutes ago, I checked Nellis, and I did not see that uploaded, but we will check it again. And but Ms. Rich is on Zoom, and so she will be able to give us that information as well. By way of background, as you are aware, the Board of Public Employee Benefits Program has the incredibly important responsibility of establishing benefits for Nevada's hardworking public employees. And the board is composed of 10 members, including 6 members with the following qualifications: 2 members who are professional employees of the Nevada system of the higher education, 2 members who are retired from public employment, and 2 members who are classified state employees. These members are appointed by the governor with the requirement that the appointments be made upon consideration of any recommendations from employee organizations that represent each of the groups. I would now like to turn the presentation over to my co-presenters to discuss the details of the bill and the proposed amendment, and then we will be available to answer questions. And Chair Flores, just as a note, I have a finance committee meeting that will be starting, so I'll stay as long as I can, and then I will slip out and let them finish the bill. But I certainly appreciate your time.
Senator, we understand that we are doing 40 different things at once, so whenever you have to sneak out, please do.
Thank you kindly.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Flores, members of the committee. For the record, Randy Soltero, today representing the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees on the bill SB 360. You will find 2 documents. Actually, you will not find 2 documents. You will find one document which represents what we passed in the Senate. That bill was something that we had put together and again, passed through the Senate that would have allowed the same 2 people from each of those different groups, but instead of a recommendation to the governor, it would have been from a list of people that the governor would have to choose from. I can tell you that the stakeholder group, including Ms. Rich, who is with us today from PEBS, reached out to us and said, look, let's talk about something that we can find a good compromise on. And I can tell you that I stand here today on behalf of AFSCME saying we have done that. We have found that it's a better way to go is to work with all the stakeholders and everybody else. And I'm very happy to pass things on to Ms. Rich to go over the new amendment. I will preface it by saying what you see on Nellis as the bill that was passed in the Senate, take all that away. All that will be removed. It will go back to the way it was prior to this legislative session. The only change that will happen now is what Ms. Rich is going to talk about. And again, AFSCME and all the stakeholders have agreed to this, and we are very happy to have come to this compromise. And with that, Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Rich to go over with the new amendment.
Thank you, sir. And Ms. Rich, welcome back to your Committee on Government Affairs whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Flores and members of the committee, and thank you, Mr. Soltero. I am Laura Rich, Executive Officer of the Public Employees Benefits Program. As Mr. Soltero mentioned, PEB and AFSCME have worked together on an amendment to this bill, which I think satisfies all parties by providing labor with a voice on the PEB board while minimizing the disruption and maintaining that stability on the board. As many of you on this committee may already know, PEB has one of the largest budgets in the state. We are about a $1 billion program. The 10-member board not only has the responsibility of determining health benefits for state employees and retirees, but the board members also have a fiduciary obligation to the program. On top of that, PEB is a self-funded health plan. So for those of us who think that interpreting our own health insurance is complicated, it is far more complex and multifaceted for board members who must understand and be able to balance the financial and member implications of every decision that is made by that board. So as a result, when this bill was initially discussed by the PEB board, there were some concerns surrounding the possible impact to the retention of expertise and institutional knowledge on the board. So the board ultimately voted to oppose the bill in its original form, and in addition to the adopted initial amendment, but also voted to propose an amendment that is very similar to what is being presented today. So the amendment eliminates all of the proposed language, as Mr. Soltero mentioned, that was included in the original bill and also in that first amendment, and instead just augments the language of the current statute by adding an 11th seat on the PEB board, which is appointed by the governor from a written list of nominations of 10 classified state employees submitted by the labor organization representing the largest number of classified state employees participating in the system. In addition to this, there is one other change included that was not considered by the PEB board, which is that this position is specifically exempt from the requirement in current statute that at least 4 members must have a bachelor's degree or more advanced degree or equivalent professional experience. I do want to emphasize that these changes do not preclude employee groups or labor organizations from making recommendations to the governor for any position on the board. I believe that this amendment is a good compromise and can be considered a win for everyone involved. Most importantly, the largest labor organization now gets a voice on the PEB board without any disruption or changes to the current makeup and expertise on the board today. And moreover, the governor retains authority over the appointments made to the board that he or she ultimately oversees. So I'd like to end this by thanking Mr. Soltero and Senator Dondero Loop for their collaboration on this bill, their willingness to work with all of the stakeholders on the matter, and for the opportunity to present this amendment today. So with that, I will pause for questions.
Mr. Soltero, any additional comments?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open it up for questions, members. I am looking through the chat now. Excuse me. And we'll start off with Assemblywoman Anderson, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this forward. Thank you for the presentation. So I'm just making sure that I understand the amendment correctly, that this additional individual would be more than likely representing some of our secretarial staff or the custodial staff or other individuals that would not necessarily have the master's degree as required in other areas, which I just want to make sure I'm understanding that amendment correctly, because that's an incredibly important area of our public employees. Then my second question or clarification about how many members of I guess, how many employees are in that boat? Because currently, from the little bit of research that I've done on the PEB board, the majority of individuals that serve on it are at the executive level. So I'm trying to figure out how many are actually currently serving, if there are any, that are more at the non-executive level. Does that make sense, what I'm asking for? I hope. Thank you.
So Laura Rich for the record. To answer your first question, I'm sorry, I'll start with your second question. So there are two positions on the board that are specifically dedicated to classified employees. And so out of those 10 board members, there are 2 classified employees who do not represent an executive position. They are classified employees. That means that they must be appointed from made from an appointment that is someone in a position of classified employment. Today we have 2 members who I believe one represents or works in the Medicaid division, and then the other one comes from taxation. They represent the classified employees and the interest of classified employees. Additionally, there are 2 other positions that are dedicated to retirees. And so those 2 positions specifically can come from a former employee who has retired from the state. It's not necessarily dedicated to an executive or classified position. It's really any employee that has retired from the state of Nevada and can represent those retirees on the board. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
If I may answer the first part of your question, and with your indulgence, Mr. Chair, just a kind of how we got here today.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. If I could just have you state your name for the
Yes,
record
sir.
each time, please.
My apologies. For the record, Randy Saltero. When AFSCME thought about, and we looked at the makeup of the board, and there are some very qualified people on there, and they are good folks to have on that board. One of the things that is also a reality is that a majority of classified workers that are state employees are folks that maybe make between $35,000 and $50,000 a year. They don't have, a lot of them have degrees or other expertise, but they certainly have a voice, and they certainly have to pay premiums and costs of prescriptions and everything else. And so when we first got together and I first met with Ms. Rich, I told that story about those employees and how they really, when there's an increase for prescriptions or there's an increase for co-pays or something like that, that impacts that person. They might have, it's going to cost them more than it might be somebody that makes considerably more. A majority of the people that work for AFSCME, that's kind of is their price. That's what they make. And so having that voice and vote, and I'm telling you, the folks that we sat down with and then from Ms. Rich and I talking about, we want to recognize and make sure somebody that is one of those folks that work for AFSCME has that voice and vote on the committee. And through, again, meaningful compromise, we got there. And that's why I know I share the thoughts with Ms. Rich that we encourage you passing this.
Thank you, sir, for that clarification. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next, we'll go to Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's always good to see you, Mr. Saltero and Ms. Rich. I guess my question, I think you referenced an amendment. Is there, I don't see an amendment on Nellis, so I don't know if it's a conceptual amendment. Is it just posted? Okay, I know it's being posted, but if you could just go over it one more time so I understand what that amendment's going to do, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure, Laura Rich for the record. So the amendment, it eliminates everything that was originally proposed in the original bill and also in the First Amendment. And really all it does is it adds an additional 11th seat to the board, to the PEB board. And that 11th seat specifically states it's one member appointed by the governor from a written list of nominations of 10 classified state employees submitted by the labor organization representing the largest number of classified state employees participating in the system. So really, in a nutshell, instead of replacing the positions that we currently have on the board, what we've done is we've dedicated one additional position to represent that largest labor organization on the PEB board.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wasn't understanding if that was in addition to the language here, but now I understand. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Members, excuse me, members, any additional questions? Assemblyman Allison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking through the bill. Was the amendment in committee that you said you amended a lot of it out? Was that in committee, or was that, is the Senate seeing this new version, or is this the version that was passed out of the Senate?
For the record, Randy Saltero, the version that passed out of the Senate is what you see today, is that new language that says that each of it would be NSHE, the 2 seats for NSHE would have this ability to submit 10 names that would have to be done, retirees and state classified workers. That's what was passed out of the committee. Because of the time restraints that we had to move this bill forward, they moved it that way, and knowing that we were in talks and that we were coming to this better compromise for that, for PEBs and for AFSCME. So that's why this amendment will erase everything that was done in the bill that was passed out of the Senate, and will be replaced with the amendment that Ms. Rich has discussed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Black.
I think you sort of just answered my question, but just to clarify, all the members on the board are beneficiaries of the program, either past or present member or employees, right?
I would defer to Ms. Rich because she is the administrator there, but I know the answer.
For the record, Laura Rich, not necessarily. Most of them are, but there are some positions on the board that are dedicated to representing, and I have the makeup right in front of me. So there's a few positions on the board that come in with certain experience and knowledge. And so those positions specifically do not need to be employees of the state or participants in the program. So we've had, for example, on the board today, we have a subject matter expertise on health insurance and specifically a broker. So while most of them do participate in PEB, it's not all of them.
So, sorry, follow up.
Please follow up.
So that's good to know. So to your knowledge, it's just one person on the board, though, that's actually an expert in insurance.
Today, for the record, Laura Rich, today, yes, there is, there's one expert in insurance that comes in with subject matter expertise that is not a state employee. There are other state employees that do fill the roles of some of these positions on the board that do have subject matter expertise, but they're state employees as well.
So is it a requirement that someone on the board be an outside non-beneficiary person that is a subject matter expert?
For the record, Laura Rich, there are 10 positions on board today. And so, and I'll just go through them really quick. 2 members have to come from the Nevada system of higher education, 1 from the north, 1 from the south. 2 members are retirees, so they must have retired from public employment. And there is 1 member who is employed by, or I'm sorry, 2 members that are also of the classified service active employees. Then there's 1 member who is employed by the state in a managerial capacity. Then there's 2 members who have substantial and demonstrated experience in risk management, group insurance programs, healthcare administration, or employee benefits. Those 2 members right there do not have to fulfill, or do not have to be active state employees or retirees. They can be outsiders, any type of outsider that has that expertise. Currently today, we actually have 1 of those positions filled by a current active employee, and the other one is filled, that seat is filled with a subject matter expert that comes to the board with some broker experience and health insurance experience from outside of the state.
Thank you.
Members, any additional questions? Oh, Assemblyman Matthews, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to, a couple of questions, or I guess a couple of points before my question. You know, the senator in introducing the bill talked about how this is aimed to sort of reconfigure the board a bit in a way to better ensure that the interests of the employees are advanced. Of course, I think it's worth bearing in mind that the employees' interests are not the only interests at stake in this discussion. We also have to consider the interests of those who fund the program and the taxpayers of our state. It sounds also, to touch on Assemblywoman Black's line of questioning, that members and ex-members are already substantially represented in this board. And given some of the fiscal challenges that we see with the board, and given the dearth of those with really, I think, the relevant outside expertise, it kind of seems like if there's a need to shore up representation on the board, it would be in that regard. And it just seems like that this proposed change, even with the amendment, kind of takes us in the opposite direction of that. So I don't know why this particular change is going to be effective in addressing some of the systemic and significant problems or challenges that we see with the program. So I guess that's maybe more of a series of comments and questions, but we'll see if anyone would like to speak to that. Thank you.
For the record, Randy Soltero. I think that, and again, I go back to kind of how we kind of got to this place is wanting to have those state employees who are participants in this and are taxpayers and are people that would hold accountable, their benefit plan and as they would their retirement plan. And because of the majority of people that are in that plan are not the folks that, and I'm not saying that the folks that are on there now aren't well qualified. They are. We agree with that. But to have an additional voice of saying, look, when you're deciding on doing an increase to something, listen to this other voice. And I know that the folks from PEBS were agreeing that they want to hear that voice. And so then that's why we continue to move forward and got to where we are today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members, any additional questions? Seeing none at this time, thank you for the presentation. Thank you both. And I know the senator had to sneak out to go take care of some stuff on the other side of the House. At this time, we'll go ahead and invite those wishing to testify in support Senate Bill 360. And we'll start, broadcast, we'll start here in the committee room, and then we'll make our way to the phone. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Chair Flores. It's so nice to see all of you and the members of the committee in person, and everybody's well and doing fine. Priscilla Maloney, for the record, that's Priscillamaloney, just crystallizing all the comments that have been made and some of the questions too. Just to reiterate, PEB is a self-insured, nonprofit healthcare trust. It has components that are regulated by the IRS as such. It has 72, and I believe Ms. Rich will correct me if I'm wrong. It has, I believe, around 72,000 members, both active employees, retirees, and in some cases, dependents. Is that correct, Ms. Rich? Did I get those numbers right? Thank you. The AFSCME retirees are very grateful for all the work that was put into this compromise bill. We were flexible on the first version, but we are very happy, if not happier, with this consensus position. This meets all the stakeholders at the table, all of the concerns, in our view. So we're so grateful to Senator Dondero Loop, to Mr. Soltero, to Ms. Rich for all working together and coming to this position. So we do thank the members of this committee for listening to this bill. We are in strong support and hope we can go forward. And just getting more voices at the table is never a bad thing in our position. So thank you very much for your time, Chair Flores and members of the committee.
And thank you for joining us this morning. And we'll go ahead and stay here in the committee room. Good morning and welcome, sir.
Good morning, Chair Flores and committee members. This is my first day in the building. Nice to be here. Nice to see all of you. Kent Irvin, E-R-V-I-N, for the Nevada Faculty Alliance, the independent association of faculty at NC colleges and universities. We work to empower our faculty members to be fully engaged in our mission to help students succeed. We fully support SB 360 with the amendment proposed today and thank the stakeholders for working together, so ditto to what Ms. Maloney said. When state classified employees finally achieved collective bargaining through SB 135 in 2019, they gave up mandatory bargaining over benefits, so it is only fair that the classified employees have an additional seat at the table on the PEB board for all the reasons already stated. For your background information regarding the two NSHE representatives on the PEB board and how that works, whenever there's been a vacancy in those two positions, the Nevada Faculty Alliance has worked very hard and is hard to recruit highly qualified candidates working with our faculty senates. We have typically recommended 3 or 4 candidates to the governor with different skill sets to provide the governor a real choice. We recently have nominated nursing faculty members, health policy experts, a rural medicine expert, a cancer patient advocate, a former benefits manager, and a parent of a special needs child. To be clear, the large majority of our nominees have not been members of the Nevada Faculty Alliance. Rather, our main criterion is to find someone who will advocate for the participants as well as do their fiduciary duty, which they will have as a board member, to maintain the fiscal health of the program. And we fully expect AFSCME to have a similar standard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think that concludes those wishing to testify in support here in the committee room. And broadcast, if we could go to those wishing to testify in support who will be joining us via phone.
To testify in support of Senate Bill 360, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 403, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last three digits of 403, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last three digits of 499, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Carter Bundy with AFSCME, CARTERBUNDY for the record. We want to thank you for scheduling this hearing. This is a bill that we strongly support. As has been said, there was a different version that would have had more people from lists provided by AFSCME and some other groups, but we do think this is a fair compromise. We really want to thank the sponsor, Senator Dondero Loop, and of course Director Rich and Director Freed for their work with us, and of course Randy Soltero, and we encourage you to support the bill. Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us this morning. Next caller wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 360.
Caller with the last three digits of 013, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
My name is Cedric Williams. That's CEDRIC, no S, no K. Last name is Williams, WILLIAMS. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the members of the committee. I am a state Nevada employee, and I'm also the president of my local chapter here in Carson City, Nevada, with AFSCME Local 4041. We ask that the PEB board do be in support of SB 360. You know, we definitely appreciate that most PEB board members do their best to make the best decisions for thousands of state Nevada employees that are enrolled in PEB's health insurance plan, but good intentions do not replace our actual lived experiences. You know, one of the things that I want to share with you is, as a state Nevada employee, and I do work for Division of Welfare and Supportive Services here in Carson City, Nevada, just conversations with my coworkers. The question is, and this is just our belief and what we're understanding, every legislative session, it almost appears that our insurance premiums, they try to increase them with us getting less benefits for the premiums that we're paying. You know, and again, in those conversations, it has been asked, why is it that we, in evaluating our clients for medical benefits, whether it's Medicaid or Medicare, and definitely more Medicaid, are our clients getting better insurances than we are in paying for them as state Nevada employees? So again, I respectfully ask that the PEB board do support Bill SB 360. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us this morning. Next caller wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 360.
Caller with the last three digits of 577, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chris Daly, DALY, Nevada State Education Association, also here in support of SB 360. We often talk about the importance of educator voice on issues of education. Clearly, there's an issue here with worker voice and state worker voice with regards to the PEB board. So we appreciate the work that we've done with AFSCME on this bill, and just want to point out that, you know, the ultimate goal of the PEB board is to best serve Nevada public employees, and so it's only fitting that active public employees are able to nominate one member, at least one member, to this board. Thank you very much.
And thank you. We'll go to the next caller wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 360.
Caller with the last three digits of 403, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
okay,
can.
thank you. My name is Stephanie. Thank you. My name is Stephanie Dubé. It's STEPHANIE-DUBE. And I am a custodian that has worked for the state of Nevada for almost 4 years now. I am an AFSCME member of Local 4041, and I'm just calling to support this bill. It's really important to have rank and file employees on the PEB board. So thank you for your time. You have a great day.
And thank you. We'll continue with those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 360. Next caller, please.
To testify in support of Senate Bill 360, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'll invite those wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 360.
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 360, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We'll go to those wishing to testify in the neutral position to Senate Bill 360.
To testify in the neutral position on Senate Bill 360, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the neutral position at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go to any closing remarks you may have, Mr. Sotero, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Randy Soltero, thank you for allowing us to present SB 360 today. Again, I think this is a classic example of good compromise legislation, and we look forward to your approval and move on to the next level of the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 360. Again, thank you for the presentation, Mr. Soltero, and to our senator who had to take off. Lastly, for bill presentations, that is, we have Senate Bill 72. And I believe, there we go. And we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 360 and open the hearing on Senate Bill 72. Good morning, welcome, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chair Flores, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Sharat Chandra. I'm the administrator here for the Real Estate Division. Here to present SB 72 for your consideration. But before I do that, I just quickly wanted to give the committee a brief overview of the division and what we do here. I'm just going to pull up a 2-slide PowerPoint and just kind of give the committee just an overview, and then we'll move into the bill, if you don't mind, Chair.
Please. And there we go. We can see it now.
Just trying to get the slideshow going. There. Very good. So, committee members, Chair, this is just the overview of the Nevada Real Estate Division. On the left there, you'll see some of the mission critical work that we do here, which is essentially licensing. We go license real estate licensees, builders, developers, timeshare appraisers, and inspectors of structures and energy auditors. Then on the right side, you'll just see some of the numbers there that we have. That's the number of licensees currently. Also, just the amount of work that our compliance section does, phone calls received, walk-ins, at least before the pandemic, and some other data there on the right side. The bottom there really is the Real Estate Commission, which is a 5-member body that we also report to. It does discipline, regulation, and also gives us some guidance on current matters in the real estate industry. And we also have a commission of appraisers of real estate, again, a 5-member body. All members are licensees. And again, they do the same functions as a real estate commission: discipline, regulation, and education. So that's the one part of what the real estate division does. I'm going to switch to the second slide. The other function that the Nevada real estate does is we have the Office of the Ombudsman for Common Interest Communities and Condominium Hotels. I'm sure HOAs don't need any introduction to any of you. However, just some data. Again, on your left side, you'll see the number of HOAs, 33,415 and growing. This is at last count, and that has gone up a bit in the last year. And below that, we have the number of units. So again, depends on the size of the HOA, but right now we have over 571,000 units under HOAs. And then on the right-hand side, again, you'll see the Office of the Ombudsman and kind of the functions that they do. Education, registration, compliance, education are some of the key features. And again, the HOA, the Office of the Ombudsman reports to the Commission for Common Interest Communities. It's a 7-member body. All of them are appointed by the governor. And again, they do discipline, regulation, and act as in an advisory capacity. The members are diverse. There's an attorney member. There's a auditor, a member with auditing experience. There's a community management representative, and also homeowner representatives. So that is essentially a quick overview of the division, and that'll end my presentation on that. And so now, if we dive quickly into the actual bill, the reason that the division brought this bill was the Ombudsman's office receives a lot of the questions and concerns and comments, and some of the things that we addressed in this bill were some of the top things that came through that office. So, in light of that, these are the items that we brought forward. What we did, if you remember last session, Senate Bill 392 authorized the creation of a task force. This is outside of the 7-member commission body. So the task force was essentially designed to come up with some thoughts and ideas and possibly make recommendations for legislation. So what we did was we took some of these comments and concerns that came through the Ombudsman's office, and we presented it to the task force, and we had a discussion. And really, the genesis of that is this bill. Again, as you know, 116 is a complicated and complex statute. The bill doesn't attempt to overhaul or restructure anything. What we wanted to do was bring some more clarity to a couple of items on there. It really does largely 3 things. It addresses the areas of clarifying the fines and continuing violations. That was one big thing. It also provides homeowner protection by requiring limited purpose companies to also come under protections under 116 for following the process for liens and foreclosures. And really the other 2 things were client confidentiality, basically attorney-client privilege language was modified to make sure that aligned with larger statutes, and also just giving some more homeowner protections as far as appearing before a HOA board for their discipline. So those really were the 3 aspects of it. I just wanted to add in the end that when this bill was first introduced in the Senate, we did have a discussion with the community associations and some of the interested parties, and we came up with language where we believe that the commission could take some action regarding establishing a limitation zone, health, safety, and welfare violations, because that was one of the things that was addressed in the bill. And we felt that it needed a little more detail, but that detail could be done by the 7-member commission. So the authority in the statute is given to the commission to develop the rules and regulations behind what a health and welfare safety violation is, and also the amount of fines that can be assessed. So that is really my general presentation of the bill. I'm going to stop, Chair Flores, and then open up for any questions if you don't mind.
Thank you for that presentation and for your PowerPoint. I know we have several questions. We'll go ahead and start off with Assemblywoman Anderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Chandra, for the presentation. I have a few questions. So my first actually has to do with the language that is currently in statute. I want to make sure that I understand the pop cap that is mentioned on page 4, line 1, where it's 55,000 individuals. So I want to make sure that I'm understanding that this is only for the 5 counties. Is that correct? This is only going to be used for Carson, Clark, Elko, Lyon, and Washoe, or is this for all counties?
Shara Chandra for the record. Just as a clarifying, were you talking about the slides that were presented, or?
Thank you. Assembly Member Anderson, it has to do with the current language that's under section 1, 2, 4, I guess it's C, when they talk about the common interest community that was created before January 1st, 1992, and then it talks about the county whose population is less than 55,000. So I'm just trying to figure out which counties are being impacted by this proposed language. That's my first of probably 5 questions.
Shara Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. The language in there is currently in place. This impacts the same counties that are currently being impacted. I'll get you a little more detail on the exact, all of the list of the counties, if that makes sense. But this change is in line with whatever the language in that section is, which is that B that you're referencing. C, a common interest community that was created before 1992 is located in a county whose population is less than 55,000. Again, this is basically the same. The changes apply to the same conditions that currently the statute reads. But I will get you some more clarification on that.
I just want to make sure about that. Thank you. And then my second question actually has to do with, I think, the largest portion or a big portion of the proposed language. It's in section 2, I guess it looks like 2B. It's the top of page 6 when there is the discussion about the different fines. Are these fines in addition to other fines that could be assessed by the local jurisdiction?
Shara Chandra for the record. So these fines are specifically for the HOAs. So HOA associations that have their CCNRs, and so essentially these fines apply just to those associations and what they can fine their homeowners. This does not apply to the larger county, state areas that could potentially result in fines.
Okay, I'm just very concerned about fines and other items that are not actually discussed in different areas where there could be a double-edged sword, or double dipping, I guess is another way to say it. So I guess that has to do then with another section of the bill that's on page 9, section 3.4, when the hearing must be held in a meeting of the executive board and everything, but how much notice must be given for that hearing? Does it go under the current public records notice, or is it set as well by the commission when it's setting the CC&R's allowance?
Shara Chandra for the record. So essentially, it is addressed in a different area of statute, not in this bill, but essentially it's the same notices that are provided. I believe it is 30 days. But again, all this does is it's just providing some more clarification to the notices. And so if, for example, if there is a fine that has been assessed, then this allows for that person to get a hearing in front of the board and actually discuss the matter. And all it does is add some clarification to that. But all the notices and requirements and the noticing requirements are all part of 116. That those remain unchanged.
Thank you for that. And then my last question, I promise, Mr. Chair, well, for now, it has to do with just a little bit later under 4D. It has to do with the phrase reasonable time. Again, what is reasonable to one individual based upon their world might be not so reasonable based upon another. So is there a definition of what you mean by reasonable time? Or is that, again, open to the interpretation of the different boards and how they define it?
Chair Chandra, for the record, could you point me in that exact section?
Sure, it's on page 9, it's 4D of that same area that we were in before, page 9, line 34, where it states, is entitled to receive written notice of the decision of the executive board regarding the alleged violation within a reasonable time after the decision is made.
And maybe let me pull the, I think I'm looking at the amended version, so let me go to
As I'm looking at the first reprint with the amendments that were adopted on April 13th.
So you went to section.
It's on section, let's see, section 3.4.D. It's line 34 of page 9.
And sorry for again.
Quite all right.
Sharat Chandra, Administrative Real Estate Division. Sorry, the one that I'm looking, the Senate Amendment number 2734 is not jiving to what you're saying. Let me look at the. I see that. Sharat Chandra, for the record, apologies for taking so much time to look through this one. I think this addresses the amount of time that the homeowner may speak at a meeting. I don't believe it has anything to do with it's actually the time that the homeowner has to present before the board, and that is at the discretion of the chair of the board, my understanding.
A follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Follow, please.
So as I read it, then I'm not understanding that at all with the way that it is being presented. Is entitled to receive written notice of the decision of the executive board regarding the alleged violations within a reasonable time. I'm just trying to figure out what you mean by reasonable, not by how much time they have to be able to present the homeowner has to be able to present to the board in question. But, we can also have this question offline, or you can follow up with the whole committee later, whatever.
And we can go to our legal counsel at this time, please.
Hello, Erin Sturdivant, Legislative Counsel Bureau. The bill doesn't specify what is a reasonable amount of time, but the continuing violation the time period for a continuing violation does not begin until after the notice has been received by the person. So the time starts after the notice is received, but doesn't specify when the notice has to be received.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for that much leniency.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Considine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Chandra, for bringing the bill. I do have kind of a series of questions, so I will try not to jump around, but I guess my first question is there a definition, or what does it mean? And I'm looking specifically at page 6. Well, I don't know if that helps where you're looking. But section 2, where the new language would be unless the violation poses an imminent threat of causing a substantial adverse effect on the health, safety, et cetera. My question is there a definition, or what does poses an imminent threat of causing a substantial adverse effect on the health? That seems like very broad, and I know above it we're talking about the commission creating regulations, but is there a definition of what that means?
Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. That's an excellent question. So Currently, there is not. And I think the reason for this is exactly that, is to establish some parameters around what is health, welfare, and safety violations. And so I think that is a task that the commission is well equipped to do, is have that public discourse and have a public regulation workshop on it and set those parameters, and also the limitations on the fines that can be assessed for a health and safety violation. So not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, kind of, I guess. I understand exactly what you said. And looking at the use of the words like imminent threat, trying to understand the process, under Section 6, the next page under Section 6, it says the executive board must hold a hearing before it may impose a fine. So I'm seeing that as kind of a conflict. If it's an imminent threat, then you have to have an executive board meeting before they can determine whether or not it's finable?
Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. So it's two things that are being addressed here. One is the health and safety violation, and the other is the process for a regular fine. So that's the two distinctions that are being made here. So one is we're trying to put a definition around what health and safety is, and there's a process for that which is listed right below. I believe page 7 starts at line 10, essentially send a written notice to cure an alleged violation, and it kind of lists all the things that are supposed to be done. And then if you go to line 23, which is subsection 2, that is, unless it is a health and safety violation, then there's a regular process to address fines that are assessed that way.
Okay, so just so that I have it clarified in my mind, so if this is an imminent threat, then they don't get a written notice? Or they do have to go through a written notice, which kind of doesn't make sense if it's an imminent threat?
Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. I believe they do have to go through a written notice that says, send written notice to cure the alleged violation. So I think there are so many levels to what health and safety are. It could be anything from someone speeding to someone, shooting. But it's hard to encapsulate everything. But I think this is just the due process that's needed for a health and safety violation. And then there's another process for regular fines. So, again, I believe really the solution that we thought of is to actually define what that health and safety violations come under. And once you do that, then it becomes a lot easier to then talk about what needs to be done. But right now in statute, this is the current process.
Thank you. So then kind of swinging back a little bit to what Assemblywoman Anderson sort of mentioned, is if the regulations, will the regulations then sort of differentiate between like saying something is an immediate threat that might just be speeding, or saying something is like an immediate threat, which I'm wondering if then the regulations would require that you contact law enforcement or contact code enforcement, or if all of this is going to be done within an HOA, where it's just going to be like monetary fines for an unending period of time.
Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. So really the idea is giving the HOA boards certain authorities to define what health and safety is. There is a whole other aspect of calling the police and filing a complaint, and all those processes don't change. This is just giving some structure to an HOA board rather than having them define what health and safety is. And it's different for each HOA board, because I think the larger story to this also is health and safety violations, once they're accrued, could potentially result in foreclosure. So we have to be careful on how these things are assessed and defined and given out. And so that's why this process is in place.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm just still having a problem with the imminent threat language on that. And if I could, okay. So just for clarification, so in here it does say the fine must not exceed $100 for each violation or a total of 1,000. But in some of the previous conversations, it seems to me like what this bill is doing will potentially allow the commission to determine the amount of fines from speedings to whatever these violations are. Are those violation amounts going to be between that 100 and 1,000? Or the way that this is written, does that give the commission sort of the ability to decide any amount of money for any violation? And will those be set out specifically?
Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. So again, we briefly touched on this previously. So the distinction is twofold. One is there is statutory cap on a fine amount, which is $100, and then a hearing cannot exceed $1,000. So that is for regular violations, landscaping, whatever those may be. There's a separation for health and safety. And so the health and safety violations, once there is a definition of what they are, then the commission, our hope is that they would kind of establish tiers of what those are and put caps on those. What those are is, again, this is why we want the commission to look at this and have a discussion and a regulation workshop on it, so we get feedback from everybody. It's different. We're talking about HOAs across the entire state. So what is a health and safety violation in some areas may not be relevant in others. And so that's the discussion we're going to have and set caps. So to answer your question, there's two distinct things here. There's a health and safety violation, which this is not capped in that. Currently, there is no cap. What we're hoping to do is that the commission would discuss that and establish tiers or caps on that. The regular violations are $100, max $1,000 per hearing, and then those can accumulate over time if they're not paid.
Thank you. And then I think I just have a couple more questions. So if for safety and health violations, right now, those are unfettered fines. We don't know what those could be. There are no caps on that. In my short time here, I see that there is sort of a basis that these types of fines and fees are put into statute so that they cannot be changed often, or at least there's like a cap put in statute. I don't know, that's something that you would consider, but that would be something that I think would be helpful. And then on my page 8, where it's talking about these fines, if the fine is imposed pursuant to subsection 1, it says that in the new language under B, it says that the fine is not subject to any limitation on the amount of fine set forth in subsection 1 or the regulations adopted thereto. So does this mean that if a fine if it's not cured within 14 days, that the fine can continue to be added like weekly or in a periodic amount, and there's no end date to that? And my reasoning to ask is what you mentioned earlier, is these fines can pile up and then someone can lose their home in foreclosure. And that's what I'm worried about.
Sure, Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. So again, I want to be careful here and make a distinction. Yes, so to answer your first question, yes. So if there is a regular violation, not a health and safety violation, the fine, $100, if not paid, for example, let's just take one fine, max cap of $100. If not paid over a period of time, will accumulate until that fine is cured. However, that does not allow you to foreclose on that person. So that's not true, and I want to make sure I'm very clear on that. The only time that you can foreclose as far as fines are concerned is it is a health and safety violation. Those are the only fines that can be brought into a foreclosure proceeding, not your regular fines and fees that are fines that are assessed through a regular, either a landscaping issue or something other than health and safety. So that's the distinction I just wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, and I really appreciate that distinction. I just want to make sure that health and safety violations right now don't have any regulations. They could be anything from speeding to something like imminently dangerous to people. Don't necessarily have a time limit and can lead to foreclosures.
Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. That is correct. And so that this is part of the solution to address health and safety violations and then establish some kind of a payment structure around it. And then, but yes, to answer your question, if it's a health and safety violation, then it could potentially lead to a foreclosure versus a regular fine that does not.
Thank you. I appreciate your time and patient answering my questions, and thank you, Chair Flores, for the indulgence for the number of questions.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next, we'll go to Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us this Friday morning. So I think I just want to make sure that I'm understanding something correctly here, because I know that obviously this bill is very complicated and there's a lot of legal jargon. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this, that the intent is for the regulations to be created by the commission. And then when I did a little bit of more research, the commission that would be creating these regulations is then the Commission for Common Interest Communities and Condominium Hotels. Is that correct?
Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. Madam Vice Chair, that is absolutely correct. The 7-member body, which is the Cic Commission, will be working on a regulation to address the statutory guidance. Yes.
Thank you, because from what I'm hearing in the conversation, what I'm seeing in the bill, I think that like our vision for this legislation very much meets the same vision, and that it's a shared vision. So could you talk a little bit about the commission, who makes it up, and the role of the commission with HOAs? Because my understanding is not that the regulations would be created by the HOAs, but rather that this is enabling language that allows for the commission to kind of oversee what the HOAs are doing. Is that correct? And could you give us that background? Thank you.
Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Great question. So yes, the Cic Commission is a 7-member body consisting of homeowners, very specifically, and I can send the committee the exact details on the statutory thing, but essentially it is a homeowner, the homeowner members. We also have a attorney member, we also have a community manager member, and then we also have someone that is a CPA, that has experience in audits. And so the 7-member body is essentially tasked with creating regulation, or at least working through regulation to address HOAs. So there's 2 things that we have. We have community managers that are licensed through our office. Those are your professional community managers that run associations. And we also want to understand that associations are members. So the HOAs consist of members that are elected, and they're a body, and the community manager helps this group run their HOA more efficiently. So that's really essentially what an HOA consists of. Members that are on the board that make the decisions, and the HOA is covered by their CCNRs, which talk about all the nitty-gritty details. 116 is a layer on top of that to ensure that they stay in compliance. And so, yes, so for example, something like this, in the statute, it says that the commission shall promulgate regulations to address the health and safety violations. Now, the 7-member body will go through a regulation workshop, which we do normally on regulations. And essentially we'll have a public forum, workshop, people can write in, and there's a discussion, and then this body will kind of determine what those regulations look like. And then eventually it will come to a legislative commission for final approval. So that's the process. It's not run by the HOAs. It is an independent body that's appointed by the governor that oversees the regulations of 160.
Thank you. And so presently, right now, these types of policies would be created by the HOA, but this would be saying that the HOAs have to be using the policy that's then created by this commission, right? So that there is that additional, and it ensures kind of more due process, I imagine, and then more consistency from HOA to HOA.
Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. That is accurate, Madam Vice Chair. So right now, if we just talk about the health and safety, yes, each HOA is interpreting what health and safety is for their HOA. And I believe by doing this, it kind of gives a kind of a level playing field for everyone to understand what those are. And only things that are that serious in nature, and those can be discussed and established by the commission. And that way, everyone's on the same page and we're not dealing with, because I believe health and safety violations are a serious violation and need some kind of a framework to operate.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and it helped me understand the intent of the bill and how this will enable the commission to create those regulations.
And thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I think that was a good way to segue and to kind of close everything up and wrap up any lingering questions. At this time, we'll go ahead and move on. I know Commerce and Labor is starting in about 8 minutes here. So I want to make sure we give the opportunity to those members that need to leave to be able to do so. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and invite those wishing to call in support of Senate Bill 72 to do so at this time. Broadcast, please.
To testify in support of Senate Bill 72, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 72.
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 72, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 701. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. My name is Mike Kozar, K-O-S-O-R. I'm a resident of Southern Las Vegas and a multiple-term board member of a HOA. I speak in opposition, and in the interest of time, many of the questions that were raised by this committee were very good questions as to the content of the bill, of which I had some concerns, and so therefore won't go into those. One section that has not been raised, where I have a concern, deals with Section 3A of the proposed amendment. It was not discussed in the Senate committee hearing, nor have I heard it discussed in any of these hearings, and that has to do with the elimination of a provision whereby a executive board can meet only to discuss litigation in executive session. I'll remind the committee that the intent of the statute all along is to provide maximum transparency to homeowners. This provision, by eliminating that, would actually allow a executives board to meet anytime it met with an attorney. Okay? That would open up a broad spectrum that I think the statute never intended the executive board session be allowed to do. It should be limited to just the 4 or 5 provisions that are there. However, eliminating it would open this wide open, and I've never heard a justification or a reason why that change was necessary. So thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for joining us this morning. We'll go to the next caller wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 72.
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Now we'll go to those wishing to testify in the neutral position for Senate Bill 72.
To testify in the neutral position on Senate Bill 72, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in the neutral position at this time.
Thank you. And we'll come back to you, sir. I don't know if you wish to address the concern raised by the opposition and/or any closing remarks you may have. Please.
Thank you, Chair Flores. Let me just quickly address that one section. So essentially, currently, the language just allows an association to meet with an attorney on matters relating or proposed only on pending litigation. That we believe is a little restrictive because an association should be able to engage with their attorney on matters. And so what we did was we went back and just fell back to NRS 49.035 to 49.115, which is attorney-client privilege. And so that way, whatever is afforded for attorney-client privilege would be afforded to the HOAs the same way. And that was the only concern which was brought up, so I want to address that. Other than that, I just want to thank the chair and Madam Vice Chair and the committee for indulgence and the patience with me today. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us this morning. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 72. Members, please make sure you reach out if you have any additional questions or need clarification. Last on the agenda is public comment. I want to remind those of you who intend to call for public comment that this is not a time to reopen a hearing on a particular bill, but rather for you to speak about general topics that fall within the purview of this committee. With that, we'll go to public comment. Broadcast, please.
To take place in the public comment queue, please press *9 now. Caller with the last three digits of 556, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Anne Marie Grant, ANNEMARIE GRANT. My brother was murdered by Reno Police and Washoe County Sheriff's Office on 10/4/2015 during a mental health crisis. I wanted to talk about some data that Washoe County Sheriff recently released on their website. They call it their Washoe County Dashboard. It went up falsely stating that there were 0 homicides at Washoe County Jail since the year 2000. That's obviously, to me, immediately recognized that it's false data from Washoe Sheriff Darren Balaam. It took the Reno Gazette calling them out on it for the dashboard to be changed. He listed the homicides on the first dashboard as excited delirium and 0 homicides. Nico Smith, who was asphyxiated by multiple Washoe County deputies, including Sergeant Corey Solferino. Justin Thompson was the other homicide, as well as my brother Thomas Purdy. I believe that it was intentional propaganda, but false propaganda by Sheriff Balaam. There should be a database to review complaints made against any police officer in Nevada, whether substantiated or not. We have that in my home state of Massachusetts. Rubber bullets can be life-altering. Journalist Linda Tirado was permanently blinded in her left eye in Minnesota. Soren Stevenson lost an eye after getting hit by a rubber bullet while protesting the police killing of George Floyd this summer. Use of tear gas in warfare, as with all other chemical weapons, was prohibited by the Geneva Protocol of 1925. It prohibited the use of asphyxiation gas or any kind of gas, liquid substances, or similar materials. Yet we allow it to be used against community members. Policies are not law. And what do cops say to us? Don't like it? Talk to your legislators. That is what myself and your constituents have been doing this session. I just want to remind everyone, last year, while the families of those killed by Reno Police Sparks and Washoe County Sheriffs were honoring our loved ones during Reno Cop Watch annual event supporting families, Reno Police literally stood across the street laughing as mothers were on the mic, pouring their hearts out, crying to the community, wanting justice, just like George Floyd's family, charges and jail time. Please support bills that promote transparency and accountability. If law enforcement oppose a bill, it's probably because it promotes accountability and transparency. I just heard Las Vegas Metro say that they're the gold standard when it comes to police. I literally laughed at that. If they're fighting against a bill, I ask you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this morning. And we'll continue with public comment.
Caller with the last three digits of 701. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, committee. My name is Mike Kozar, K-O-S-O-R. I felt it important to clarify a comment made by, or at least attempt to add clarity to a comment by Administrator Chandra, reference my comment on Section 3A. It has to do with the executive session. My concern with the removal in the executive session, the language is that it will allow the HOA board to meet in private to discuss with the council, which is counter to the intent all along. I'll remind the committee that the council to an HOA actually has a fiduciary duty to all homeowners, not necessarily the board, except the board in its representation of homeowners. Therefore, discussions with the board in open session, which are open only to members, is not necessarily a violation and should be considered here.
Sir, thank you for calling in. We have closed the hearing. However, I want you to be able to get your point across. If I could ask that you send an email to our committee manager, Ms. Judy Bishop, and what I'll do is I'll ensure that all members get that concern delivered to them via email. And then I'll ask that the members reach out to you to continue the dialogue, should they agree and or have any additional questions on that specific hearing. It's just that we have closed out the hearing, and now we're in public comment.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll do that. Thank you.
Please do that. Thank you, sir. And thank you for your interest and helping out the committee today. Next caller wishing to testify in public comment.
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no more callers at this time.
Thank you. Members, thank you for all the dialogue and the back and forth today. I appreciate everybody coming prepared to engage in thoughtful conversation. It was a tough, heavy week, as you all know, and so hopefully you can enjoy some extra hours on Monday. We won't be meeting, and then we'll be meeting on Tuesday at 9 a.m., and we'll be hearing Senate Bill 109 and Senate Bill 222. Just please make sure you give yourself an opportunity to review those ahead of time. Members, thank you for all the work, and to staff, thank you all for all your work as always. This meeting is adjourned.